house at 23 Cedar Lane had been empty for 37 years. It wasn't haunted, the neighbors whispered. It was hungry. That was the distinction they made, their faces pale in the glow of porch lights. I bought it because I was arrogant and broke. A structural engineer with more debt than sense, I saw a challenge, not a cautionary tale. The first week was for demolition. The air inside was thick and still, tasting of dust and damp plaster. It swallowed sounds. My hammer blows didn't echo. They just thudded and died. I started in the master bedroom, tearing down water-stained wallpaper. Behind the third sheet, I found the writing. Not graffiti, not a child's scribble. Sentences etched into the lath and plaster with something sharp and deliberate. The language was archaic, formal, and wrong. It spoke of the welcoming of the quiet flesh and the feast beneath the foundation. It made my skin prickle, but I dismissed it as the ramblings of some past occupant, perhaps the old man, Harold, who had died here alone. That night I heard the first sigh. I was camped on a sleeping bag in the living room, the room bare save for my tools. It wasn't a wind-through-cracks sound. It was a lung-deep, weary exhalation that seemed to come from the floorboards beneath me. I froze, my own breath held. The sigh repeated, followed by a soft, wet click, like a tongue unsticking from a palate. I spent the rest of the night in my truck. The next day, rationalizing sleep deprivation, I decided to inspect the crawlspace. The access was in the floor of a narrow pantry. The hatch was unnaturally cold. I lifted it, and a smell welled up, not rot or mildew, but the scent of wet clay and cold stone, deep earth and ancient. My headlamp beam cut a feeble swath through the black. The space was deeper than it should have been, the foundation walls descending into pure shadow. And the ground. It wasn't earth. It was a smooth, dark, and subtly undulating surface, like the skin of a still lake. I lowered myself, my boots seeking purchase. They touched something firm, but slightly yielding. I shone my light directly down. The beam reflected off a surface that was not dirt. It was glossy, veined with faint threads of pallor. It curved away in a gentle, organic mound. I took a step. The surface gave softly, then firmed, like pressing on a giant, sleeping muscle. A tremor passed beneath my feet, a slow, rhythmic contraction, followed by a long, drawn-in breath that made the entire crawlspace suddenly feel claustrophobic. The air grew thick and coppery. My headlamp flickered. In that stuttering darkness, I saw them, not with my eyes, but in my mind, projected with terrifying clarity, images of roots, not of trees, but of something fleshy and blind, pushing through soft soil, seeking the heat and pulse of living things above. A profound, cellular loneliness washed over me. A hunger so vast and old it dwarfed human conception. I scrambled out, slamming the hatch. My heart was a trapped bird. I told myself it was a hallucination, a gas leak, anything. But the house felt different now. Aware, the phenomena escalated, but never showily. Tools left on the floor would be found inches from their original spot, as if something had gently nosed them in the night. The temperature in one room would drop sharply, while another grew uncomfortably warm, mimicking a crude circulation. Once I found a perfect handprint, small and cold, pressed into the condensation on a window pane from the inside. When I touched it, the glass beneath was frigid and slightly tacky, I stopped sleeping. I lived on caffeine and dread. The sighs became a constant background hum, a subaudable vibration I felt in my teeth. I began to understand. The house wasn't a structure haunted by a ghost. It was an organ, a digestive sac. The previous owner, Harold, wasn't just a recluse. He was the last caretaker, the one who fed the quiet thing below to keep it slumbering. His death had left it unfed. My presence, my heat, my breath was an appetizer. The final night, the electricity died. My generator refused to start. I had one flashlight. The darkness was absolute, a physical pressure. The sighing stopped. The silence was worse. I sat on the floor in the hallway, back against the wall. The beam pointed shakily at the pantry door. The hatch opened. It didn't bang. It swung upward silently, smoothly, on hinges that hadn't worked hours before. From the opening, a shape emerged. It was not a monster, not a specter. It was Harold, or what was left of him. He was pallid, waxy, his clothes hanging on a frame that seemed both shrunken and fused. He moved with a stiff, marionette grace, his feet not quite touching the floorboards. His eyes were milk blue and vacant, but his mouth worked, his lips peeling back from gray gums. A voice, like stones grinding together in a deep well, emanated from him. It is time. It wasn't his voice. It was the house's voice, using his remnants as a speaker. Time for what? I whispered, my own voice a dry crackle. The welcoming, the Harold thing in tone. The foundation must be fed. It dreams of warmth. It dreams of closure. It extended a hand, not to grab me, but to gesture toward the open hatch. A warm, dank breath exhaled from the darkness below, carrying that smell of deep clay and something sweetly metabolic. I knew then that running was pointless. The house would pull me back. The hunger in the earth was the true gravity here. But in my terror, a cold engineering clarity emerged. A structure, no matter how alien, has a logic. A digestive system needs a tract. An organ needs an anchor. The thing below was connected to the land, yes, but to the house itself. The house was its conduit, its mouthpiece. Sever the connection. My sledgehammer lay 3 feet away. The Harold thing watched me, its head tilted with a bird-like curiosity. I lunged, not for the exit, but for the hammer. My hand closed around the cold handle. The thing didn't move. It simply watched as I turned and, with a scream that was pure, shattered defiance, swung the hammer with all my strength into the wall beside the pantry. Not the plaster. The stud. A old, load-bearing 2-by-4. The impact juddered up my arms. The house let out a sound, a sharp, pained inhalation, a hiss of static and cracking wood. The Harold thing stumbled, its form blurring. I swung again. Crack. Splinters flew. I felt a corresponding tear in the air, a psychic rupture. The floor beneath me shuddered, not in hunger, but in agony. I became a machine of destruction. I swung at the studs, the corner posts, the lintel above the pantry door. Each blow was met with a shriek of protesting timber and a deeper, subterranean wail of fury. The floorboards in the hallway began to buckle. Plaster rained from the ceiling. The Harold thing was unraveling, its form dissolving into a mist of dust and shadow. Its borrowed voice a fading screech with a final titanic swing. I smashed the header above the crawlspace entrance. There was a deafening groan, a sound of something immense and old shifting in profound distress. The floor in front of the hatch splintered and collapsed downward into the black. The warmth, the sweet metabolic smell, vanished. A wave of paralyzing, absolute cold erupted from the hole, along with a stench of void and forgotten stone. The sighing stopped. The pressure in the air popped. I didn't grab anything. I fled through the collapsing hallway, out the front door, into the shocking, clean cold of the night. I didn't stop until I was a mile down the road. I watched from a distance as the house at 23 Cedar Lane, its structural integrity shattered by my targeted fury, sagged in on itself the next day. It didn't explode. It imploded like a lung collapsing. The authorities called it a tragic accident, faulty renovations. I know the truth. I didn't kill it. You can't kill the land, the deep, silent hunger that sleeps beneath certain places. But I wounded it. I broke its teeth, the house that was its mouth. It is quiet now. It dreams its vast, cold dreams. But sometimes, in the dead of night, when the wind is just right, I feel a faint, familiar ache in the foundations of my new home, a distant, longing sigh. And I know, with a certainty that chills my blood, that it is not over. It is simply digesting, and when it is ready, it will begin to dream of warmth again. The house at 179 Mercer Street was not yet a ruin. Its decay was internal, a slow, dry rot of the soul that left the red brick facade deceptively intact. I bought it for a song because the estate agent couldn't meet my eyes in the master bedroom. He said the previous owner, an elderly linguist named Dr. Alistair Finch, had passed in his sleep. The way his throat tightened on the word past should have been my first warning. I am a sound archivist. My world is one of captured whispers, the last recordings of extinct birds, the ghostly radio transmissions of dead stations, the infrasound of shifting tectonic plates. Silence is my canvas, and 179 Mercer offered it in abundance, its thick walls swallowing the city's drone. I set up my studio in the basement, a concrete cube Dr. Finch had used for storage. It was there, while calibrating a hypersensitive parabolic microphone to capture the settling of the house's bones, that I first heard the breathing. It was not my own. It was a wet, rhythmic sound, like a bellows working through a damp cloth. It seemed to emanate from the northeastern corner, but when I moved the microphone, the sound remained perfectly centered in my headphones, its volume unchanged. A parasitic audio signal. I checked my equipment, my cables, the house's electrical wiring. Everything was clean. The breathing persisted for exactly 17 minutes each time. Beginning at 3:04 a.m., I began sleeping in the basement, obsessed. I ran The pattern was not biological. Beneath the wet inhalation was a harmonic, a frequency so low it vibrated in my molars rather than my ears, a sensation of profound gravitational dread. I started leaving the microphone active, recording through the night. One morning, reviewing the data, I saw it. At 3:21 a.m., as the breathing faded, the waveform didn't return to baseline. It formed a pattern, a series of precise, modulated dips and spikes. It was language. My hands shook as I filtered out the wet noise, isolated the subharmonic, and sped it up. A voice emerged. It was granular, ancient, a voice of grinding stones and deep earth. It spoke a single sentence, in no language I recognized. I spent days with linguistic databases, finding nothing. In desperation, I searched Dr. Finch's neglected study. Behind a false panel, in a mahogany desk, I found his private journals. Not in English, but in a dense, idiosyncratic phonetic script of his own devising. It took me a week to crack it. He had heard it, too. He called it the Tenant. His early entries were academic thrill, the joy of a linguist presented with a wholly new syntax. It speaks in palindromic tense, he wrote. Its past is its future. Its subject is always an object of consumption. His translations grew more fevered. The sentences were simple, horrifying statements. The walls are hungry. The foundation dreams of teeth. The house is an esophagus. Finch's handwriting deteriorated. He wrote of offering to quiet it. First, it was small animals from the market, then strays. His final entry, scribbled in a shaky hand, read, "It understands bargaining. It has learned my name. It asks for a specific taste, the taste of kin. Eleanor is coming to visit tomorrow. She always was a quiet child." I dropped the journal. The estate agent's choked voice echoed in my memory. Passed in his sleep. I called a former colleague in forensic pathology. After much persuasion, he accessed the file. Dr. Alistair Finch was found in his bed, dehydrated, weighing barely 90 pounds. His cause of death was listed as organ failure due to severe malnutrition. His daughter, Eleanor, had been reported missing 3 weeks prior. She was never found. That night, the breathing began at its usual time. But now, I understood. It wasn't breathing in. It was breathing out. The house wasn't inhaling the dark. It was exhaling something into our world. As the subharmonic thrum filled my skull, a new sentence resolved on my spine. I translated it using Finch's key. It was a single word, repeated like a pulse. Alistair, Alistair, Alistair. Then a new signal cut through. A higher frequency. A soft, rhythmic tapping. Tap, tap, scratch. It was coming from inside the western wall of the basement. It was Morse code, a weak, desperate signal. I am here, in the wall. My blood turned to ice. It was Eleanor Finch, or what was left of her. The tenant was speaking with her voice, using her knowledge, a grisly ventriloquist act. I should have run, but the archivist in me, the capturer of lost things, was now in a duel with the horror. I had to know. I had to record it. This was the most profound, terrible audio event in human history. I upgraded my system, installed dampeners, began broadcasting white noise to contain the phenomenon. It laughed at me. The next sentence, in the stone-grind voice, was, "Your silence is our symphony." The hour froze me. It was learning, evolving, incorporating the tools I brought into its domain. Then it made its offer. The voice, now a grotesque amalgam of the deep tone and Eleanor's fading whisper, spoke a clear sentence in English. It came not just through the headphones, but through the pipes, the floorboards, the very air. A trade. Your archives of the dead outside, for the living one within the wall. It wanted my life's work, the cries of thylacines, the songs of humpbacks, the last words of doomed cosmonauts. It wanted to consume memory, to ingest history. I refused. I played recordings of sacred texts, of chaotic noise, of loving human declarations. as if kindness or faith or chaos could poison it. The house retaliated. The temperature in the basement would plummet. The concrete walls would sweat a thin, saline fluid. I found my carefully labeled tapes erased, not digitally, but physically. The magnetic tape, now a fused, blackened strip that smelled of ozone and spoiled meat. One night, I awoke in my bed upstairs to the sound of something heavy being dragged slowly down the hallway. My door handle turned. Nothing was there. I was breaking. Sleep was impossible. I tasted copper constantly. I saw figures in the periphery of my vision, a tall, emaciated shadow that folded itself around corners, and a smaller, slumped one that wept silently by the hearth. The audio phenomena escalated. The breathing was now constant, a background radiation of sound. Whispers followed me, arguing in dead languages about the mechanics of swallowing bones. Last night, I tried one final gambit. I broadcast a loop of absolute silence, a vacuum I'd engineered from an anechoic chamber recording. For a few minutes, the house held its breath. Then, a shriek of such cognitive violence tore through my speakers that it blew the capacitors and threw me against the wall. In the ringing aftermath, a new sound began, a dry, percussive rustling, like millions of discarded insect carapaces rubbing together. It formed words directly into the auditory cortex. Bypassing the ears, "You have nothing to trade we do not already own," it stated. "You are a man of recorded sound. We are the sound itself. We are the breath between the stones, the groan of the beam, the sigh of the settling floor. We were here before the first brick. We will be here after the last dust. You are not an archivist. You are our next recording. I am writing this in my studio." The rustling is now a constant, chittering narrative, translating itself into my thoughts. It is describing me. It is detailing the process of my integration. It explains how fear has a specific resonance, how the chemistry of a breaking mind creates a unique and flavorful frequency. The door to the basement is locked. From the other side comes a new sound. It is the slick, solid sound of mortar softening to pulp, of bricks shifting apart like parting lips. The wall is opening, not to release what is inside, but to invite me in. I can hear Eleanor's voice again, clear and close, as if she is standing just behind me. But she is not. She is in the wall. And she is saying, over and over, with a relief that is more terrible than any horror, "Father is home. Father is finally home. There is room. There is always room." My microphone is still on. It is transmitting this, I think, on a frequency you cannot yet hear, but you will. When your own house settles in the night, and you hear a breath that is not yours, and a whisper that is not the wind, you will know. We are recording. We are always recording. And we are so very, very hungry for an audience. They called it the resonance, a low-frequency hum only some could hear. I was one of the unlucky ones. It started 3 months ago, a vibration at the edge of perception, like a truck idling forever in the distance. Doctors called it tinnitus, prescribed white noise. But white noise only made it clearer, a structured thrum beneath the static. A pulse. My descent began not with a shriek, but with a detail. The hum had a pattern. 5 seconds on, 2 off. A machine's breath. I became an archaeologist of my own misery, mapping its intensity. It was weakest in my bathroom, behind the old, freestanding cast-iron tub. When I pressed my ear to the floral-patterned wall, the hum didn't just lessen it. Behind the plaster was a silence so absolute it felt like a vacuum. I am a structural engineer. I do not believe in ghosts. I believe in load-bearing walls and hidden conduits. I took a hammer and a pry bar to the wall, reasoning that a cavity might be causing an acoustic anomaly. The plaster came down in dusty sheets, then the lath, and behind it, not the brick I expected, but a door. It was small, about 4 feet high, made of riveted iron, cold to the touch and utterly seamless. No handle, no keyhole. Its surface was stained with the same rust brown as old pipes. The hum was gone now. The silence from behind the door was heavier than stone. I ran my fingers over the rivets. On the 7th one, clockwise from the top left corner, it gave under my pressure with a soft click. The door swung inward without a sound. A smell rolled out: damp earth, ozone, and something sweetly metallic. The space beyond was pitch black. I fetched a high-powered flashlight. The beam cut into the darkness, revealing not a crawlspace, but a descending shaft. Walls lined with neatly fitted, glistening stones. A cold, dry draft flowed upward, carrying that scent. A ladder, iron and ancient, was bolted into the wall. I should have called someone. I know that. But the silence was a siren song after months of the hum. I had to know what made it. I climbed down. The ladder went deeper than my building's foundations. 30 feet, 50. The air grew colder, drier. I reached the bottom and shone my light around. I was in a tunnel, perfectly circular, 7 feet in diameter. The walls weren't stone anymore, but a smooth, black, glassy substance that drank the light. It was warm. The tunnel stretched into darkness in both directions. Etched into the wall by my feet was a symbol, 3 concentric circles, with a line piercing them all. It looked deliberate, modern even. I chose a direction and walked. My footsteps made no echo. The tunnel curved gently, a long, slow arc. After what felt like half a mile, I saw a light. Not daylight, but a steady, sulfur-yellow glow from a side passage. The side passage opened into a chamber. My light and the ambient glow revealed a space that stopped my breath. It was a laboratory, but one from a fever dream. Tables made of the same black, glassy material held instruments of polished brass and dull, unidentifiable alloys. Wires snaked across the floor, connected to crystals that pulsed with a faint internal light. In the center of the room stood a machine. It was the source of the hum. I could feel it in my teeth. It was a monstrous, beautiful Thinger Tesla coil, married to an organ, with brass pipes and copper coils surrounding a central column of that warm black material. At its base, a pane of smoked glass flickered with shapeless, gray shadows. The machine was inert but powered, humming its 5/2 pattern into the earth. On a workbench, I found journals. The paper was crisp, the handwriting a precise, angular script. They were not written in any language I knew, but the diagrams were clear. They depicted the machine. They showed the tunnel system, a vast radial network centered on this city. And they showed human brains, with fine filaments connecting them to schematic versions of the device. The last diagram was a cross-section of an apartment building, my building. A red line pulsed from the machine, up through the strata, terminating in a room, my bathroom. The resonance wasn't a symptom. It was a calibration signal. A soft, sliding sound came from the tunnel behind me. I killed my flashlight, pressing myself against the cold wall. The yellow light from the chamber cast long shadows. A figure moved into the doorway. It was tall, skeletally thin, and dressed in a suit of a cut that was almost correct, but not quite. Lapels too narrow, trousers too straight. Its skin was pale, stretched tight over sharp bones. It had no hair. It moved to the machine, its long-fingered hands dancing over the brass controls with intimate familiarity. The hum changed pitch, becoming a discordant chord that vibrated in my sinuses. The smoked glass panel brightened, and the shadows within coalesced. I saw fleeting images: a child's bedroom at night, a woman staring sleeplessly at a ceiling, an old man clutching his head in a diner. Human minds being observed, or tuned. The thing tilted its head, as if listening to a pleasant song. Then, slowly, it turned. It didn't look at my hiding spot. It looked past it, down the tunnel I had come from. It smiled. Its teeth were small, gray, and perfectly even. It knew I was here. It had always known. The hum, the weakness in the wall, the clicking riveted, was a mousetrap, and I had followed the cheese into the heart of it. I ran. I didn't look back. I scrambled down the black tunnel, the warm walls now feeling like a gullet. I found the ladder, climbed with a strength born of pure terror. I hauled myself through the small door, slammed it shut, and heard the click of the rivet locking. For a week, I lived in a frantic, silent panic. I had the wall repaired, sold the apartment at a massive loss, and moved across the city. The silence was back. I told myself it was over. I had escaped. Then, last night, as I lay in my new bed in a modern high-rise, I heard it, faint, beneath the white noise of the city. A hum, a different pattern this time. 3 seconds on, 4 off. A new calibration. And this morning, I found the first symbol, etched into the condensation on my bathroom mirror. 3 concentric circles, and a line piercing them all. It was never about the apartment. It was about the listener. The resonance isn't in the walls. It's in the mind. And once you can hear it, you are part of the circuit. They can find you. They are finding me. The machine is hungry for a stable connection, and I have the perfect ears. The hum is getting louder. It's in the fridge's motor, in the plumbing, in the buzz of the streetlight outside. They are tuning the world to their frequency, and my skull is the receiver they've now perfectly wired. I hear other things now, beneath the hum, whispers in the static. They're not speaking English. They're speaking in images, in cold, geometric concepts that fracture my thoughts. I see the tunnels expanding. I see where the other lines terminate, in bedrooms and offices and cars across the city. Thousands of us, listening to a broadcast from below. Our quiet despair feeding something that is methodically, patiently, mapping the interior of human consciousness. I am going to find a hammer. I am going to find every wall in this new apartment that feels silent. I will break them all down. But a cold, logical part of me, the engineer, knows it's futile. The door isn't in the wall anymore. The door is in my head, and it's already open.